And so I'm thinking about progress, human progress, and how it seems to be unending. And there always seems to be something more to be done and more to achieve. So going back in time to maybe, I don't know, 1850, sometime very long ago, people of that time must have looked around themselves and thought that they've achieved a lot and that life was much better than it was 100 years previously in 1750. So they'd be thinking that they've achieved a lot and that they've advanced a lot. That they can have a house and food on the table. And I don't know what was going on in 1850 in terms of kitchen equipment and things like that. But the bottom line is, whatever they had, they would have thought that they'd achieved a lot and were very grateful to not be living 100 years ago. So obviously, now it's the same thing. If we think what life must have been like 100 years ago, we'd scratch our heads and wonder how they can manage it. The things we have now are absolutely amazing compared with what we had 100 years ago. Cars and roads and houses and televisions and phones and computers. The list is endless, but it's absolutely fantastic to imagine what life will be like in 100 years' time. In 100 years, they'll be looking back on how we are now and shake their heads in wonder and think it is a miserable existence and that we had nothing. And they would hate to imagine having to live the way we do now. So, how could our lives now be considered so difficult and so impossible to someone 100 years' time looking back on it? It's hard to imagine how our lives could be so different that how we live now would seem to be very difficult and it's not something that they'd want to have. So it's just amazing that the progress that we make is unending and achieves things that we can't even conceive of now. So I have no idea what life will be like in 100 years, but I do know that the people living in 100 years' time will look at how we live now and think it's extremely difficult and extremely backward, and they wouldn't want to live like this. So that's absolutely amazing that the way we live now, it would be seen to be very difficult and horrible, and that situation seems to keep on repeating. So in 100 years' time, people would think the way we live now is awful, and then 100 years from that, so in 200 years' time, they would think that the people 100 years' time were living an awful life. I'm wondering when that will ever end, or will we always keep on achieving and improving? But there must be an end point. I just don't know what that might be.